I see your wonderful faces. All right. So, I want to just remind folks to please engage with all of us in the chat. Please share insights that come up for you. We'd love to hear from you all. But let's start by everyone introducing who they are, what they do, why they're excited about this conversation. I'm going to start with Mary.
Amber, thanks very much. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Mary Draves. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer and Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety for Dow, Inc. You may recognize Dow from our old name, Dow Chemical. So we spun out in 2019. So very excited to talk about mental health. This has been, for me, I think, a very important 24 months for mental health. In our remit in EH&S is also our occupational health organization, and we have really been dealing with a lot of different issues, as you can imagine, from a health perspective with COVID, but this is probably the number one issue that we have on our radar moving forward. So Amber, really excited to be here.
Excited to have you. I'm going to move next to Raquel. Please tell us who you are, what you do, and why you're excited for today's discussion.
Hi, everybody. I am Raquel Tatar. I am the Senior Director of Research and Measures at a nonprofit called Healthy Minds Innovations, or HMI for short. HMI's whole mission is to improve well-being worldwide and create a kinder, wiser, more compassionate world, which is to say I live and breathe making people better. This is what I do every single day. And our work is really predicated on the really radical notion that following decades of neuroscientific work, we have learned that well-being is a skill that you can strengthen and work on in little ways every day for the rest of your life. And that there are ways that we can increase and improve those skills for ourselves and our communities and our workplaces. And we have seen this was a problem before COVID. This has gotten much worse since COVID. So we have really felt this drive to make these resources and this knowledge that we have attained available for everybody as far as wide as we can. Really excited to be here.
So excited to have you as well. Dr. Marta, if you could please share who you are and why you're excited, what you do with all of us. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight. I am really excited to be part of this great panel with a lot of inspirational leaders here. So my original background is actually banking and finance, but my passion was always mental health. So I was very lucky to have worked for a clinic that was serving C-suite management and let's say VIPs or ultra high net worth individuals from a mental health and addiction perspective. Regardless of that, I'm a mental well-being advocate. From my finance background, I'm also supporting sustainability and the thought of sustainable investing. And I always say without mental health, there is no sustainability, and there is no sustainability without mental health. So I'm really an advocate in both directions. And I'm really excited to be tonight here to discuss with you how the future might look like and how we can, with joining hands, change the world how it is right now.
Excellent. Awesome. So glad to have you. And last but not least, Sarah, if you could please tell us who you are, where you're from, and why you're excited for tonight's conversation.
Sure. Hi, Amber. So I'm broadcasting to you from the UK, which is why it's dark. I'm in my garden shed, which became HQ for my organisation during the pandemic. And we've kind of kept this. I'm sure we'll come back to it. So my job is chief executive of a large professional services group in the UK, the biggest part of which is Shakespeare Martineau, which is a law firm. So we've got over 1,000 lawyers, people in the UK working partly remotely, partly together now, and mental health has absolutely gone up the agenda during that time. On a personal level, I'm really excited about it because I think we've made a shift now in terms of getting mental health at work to another level, and I think we can not only keep it there but improve on it. During the pandemic, my leadership style had to change and adapt, and I became much more authentic. You can see this is not your traditional chief executive office, including singing for my own sanity, but singing to my business for people's mental health as well. So really looking forward to hearing what you guys have been doing as well to help look after your people.
Excellent. All right. Well, if you want to break out in song at any point here, we allow it. And also, awesome. And I'm a fan of the plants. You can't see them because of the background, but I love it. I love it. So let's just hop right to it, everyone, because we have lots to discuss and not a lot of time. We can get started by stating the obvious, right? So like right now, people and women and caregivers in particular are more stressed and burned out than ever. And at the same time, workplaces are taking notice and we're implementing new initiatives that may support employees' well-being, offering mental health days, right? For example, but let's take a moment to just discuss what the most exciting and promising ideas you've seen emerge in the workplace as regards to this mental health focus. So I'd love to start with Raquel with this. What are some things that you're seeing that you're excited about when it comes to the emergence of, mental health in the workplace?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things that as a scientist who has been studying stress and coping my entire career, the things that I'm really excited to see is this shift from well-being being the outcome or the goal or a static thing that you're going to achieve, and really acknowledging that it's a skill that you can develop the way that you develop any skill, be it exercising or play the violin or any other thing that you want to develop over time, and embracing that it's going to ebb and flow throughout your day and throughout your life. And we're seeing more and more, certainly our own workplace well-being program is adapting to the fact that you need to have this holistic and flexible approach to be able to fit into the nooks and crannies of our everyday life. There are some days where you yourself or your employees might feel like they're on top of the world, and other days where you might want to fling yourself from the top of the world. And your well-being skills have to be able to adapt to those two different existences and be able to improve and continue improving every day.
Thank you for acknowledging those polarities. I really, really appreciate that. And also, thinking about this as something that we have to work toward. So I want to go to Mary with the same question, just about the things that you're seeing in the workplace that excite you around well-being and mental health.
Yeah, Amber, I think one of the things that is really important for us is that our employees told us that this is important, right? So each year we do an annual voice survey, and it's really about hearing what it is that our employees are concerned about. And the last 2 years, we've heard about the concept of stress. I don't have the energy I need for my friends and family when I leave work. I don't think that's unique to us, really, but I think it validates that, this is an important topic. This is a very, very important topic. I think for us, the key thing is that our executive leadership immediately acknowledged that. That was an extremely important step. I think a lot of times mental health is, kind of put in the back corner. But now our executive leadership was talking about it on a very, and sometimes very personal level. I think we also demystified what it meant to go and use resources that we had available. Our company has a very extensive EAP program. And people were like, oh, I'm not supposed to go use that, and all of a sudden it became like, oh, that's a resource. As Raquel said, we were teaching ourselves about how to really manage, our stress level or our mental health challenges. The other thing that became really, I think, obvious to us that was important, and I was very excited about it, is people started talking about it, just talking about it. The simple fact of someone saying, I did this and it helped me do this was really empowering for people. I will tell you, I shared one of my own personal stories. I have a younger brother who's battling brain cancer. It was a very difficult topic for me. How do you talk about losing someone you care about deeply? And so I shared my own mental health challenge about how I coped with that, how I sought resources, and it was amazing to see the response. So I think that what is exciting is that the workplace is shifting. Things like psychological safety are now front and center in terms of our needs and our desires. And, employees are feeling very confident about coming forward and talking about those issues.
All really important points. Thank you so very much, Mary, for sharing that. I want to ask Sarah this same question. Things that you're seeing, promising, exciting ideas around this emergence of workplace mental health.
Yeah, I'm seeing so many of them, but I'm just going to talk about one in the interest of time. And for me, it's about choice. So we know that so much mental health, and particularly when we think about women and carers, as you alluded to, Amber, is about having choice, or at least the very illusion of choice of being able to control something. So what we're calling empowered working, which is to say to people, look, we're going to focus on outputs. We want you to look after yourself, your clients, work as a team, but we don't mind where you work, how you work, when you work. You make it fit with your life, and giving people that element of choice, treating them as individuals rather than saying you have to be in 3 days a week or you have to be in 4 days a week. So we've tried to put the control as much as possible back to the individual. And for me, that aspect of choice, which is a real post-pandemic legacy that we can keep, I think will really segue in and help keep mental health going during what will still be very difficult times going ahead.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. You know, what I've heard so far is that we are centering the humanity of our employees as we move forward together through these times. So I just want to thank you all for that. And I want to give Marta an opportunity to also answer the same question before we move to the next one. Is there anything that hasn't been said yet that has emerged for you as a surprise or something that's promising when it comes to workplace mental health?
So I think everything has been said. I would like to just add one little thing that has emerged in the workplace, which is this new concept, or maybe not too new concept, empathetic leadership. Is the idea of leading with vulnerability and compassion. And it has been in the ether for a while, but it was considered vague or new age. However, you cannot even begin to conjure a mental health plan of action without it. So what is exciting to me is how the pandemic thrusts leaders into an empathetic leadership role. We are learning how to take these abstract ideas and put them into practice. For example, one of the great paradoxes of our time is that while we have never been so lonely, we've also never been so connected by a painful shared experience. So empathy is the capacity to understand what others are going through. So leaders have had no choice but to empathize with their employees over the last 2 years, as we are all going through the same thing. So what I'm saying is survival of the fittest now demands also a compassionate leader.
I love that. Empathetic leadership, compassionate leaders. Awesome. And I just want to say that, folks are also sharing in the chat. So everyone, please make sure you are dropping in your nuggets of wisdom as well. Feel free to answer the questions as we go along. I'm going to go back to you, Marta, with this next question. What obstacles do you see from a business perspective when it comes to prioritizing mental health initiatives? So I'm going to start first with you and then move on to someone else.
So the biggest obstacle I see is social amnesia in the workplace once the pandemic is over. Social amnesia refers to a collective forgetting by a group of people, and it's a common psychological mechanism, even on an individual level. For example, you often feel ready to tackle your demons when you feel low, but then you start to feel better and you cling to that sense of normality and joy. Ultimately, we can and will ourselves put into forgetting how bad things can get. And I'm afraid of this happening once the pandemic is behind us, because the reality is that hundreds of companies have suffered a vast financial losses, and the very real need to increase profit margins could see mental health drop to the bottom of boardrooms' agenda. So it's really important to act now and remember, when you foster a sense of safety in the workplace, productivity, innovation, and profits increase.
Yeah, we do not want to forget about or lose any of the wonderful learnings that have come out of these challenging times. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm going to go with Mary next. Same question. Obstacles you see from a business perspective when it comes to prioritizing these mental health initiatives.
Yeah, there are quite a few, and I think they're probably just obvious ones, right? I mean, for us, it's when, I think I'd highlight is when business priorities get in the way of priorities that people have for themselves. And that happens. And that really happens. That's real. And how do we coach one another to make sure that we always keep our personal priorities at front and center? I think people really need to continue to feel that ability to do that. The other thing that I think is still a challenge, we talked a little bit about stigma, but, sometimes, the mental health issues are your issues. They're not my issues as a leader. And we've seen that, in many respects where people are like, well, that's something you have to deal with. No, this is a team sport. And that is in direct relationship then to your performance. So I see those as two really big challenges that we're going to continue to need to address as we move forward.
Excellent. Love this idea of the team sport and balancing the individual's needs also with the needs of the collective. Maybe we should think about it like track and field or tennis where all of our points come together. So I want to move to Sarah with this same question about obstacles from a business perspective.
I fear the collective amnesia that Marta talked about. I think this is such a big opportunity to drive positive change. We mustn't let it go. And I think linking to something that Heather's put in the chat, which is about psychological safety, which was also mentioned, I think, by Mary, and the fact that we've got to all work together to drive it forwards. My worry, my barrier would be middle management. Sorry to crowd everybody into one big group, but I think as leaders, we've been given permission to be authentic, and it's really easy for us to do it. The guys in the middle are balancing what you just talked about, Amber, the day-to-day performance with the need to give people choice and flexibility, but also make sure we're still delivering. So I think for me, we've got to really equip that really pivotal group of people in the middle and make sure that they're not getting this pressure from both sides, and they have the skills and the confidence to be able to have the right dialogue to keep the balance, I think.
I think that is excellent, a very excellent point. I think we often forget about the people who are making those connections and are managing those people and reporting up top. So thank you so much for acknowledging that, Sarah. Raquel, same question before we move on to the next one. Obstacles as far as a business perspective is concerned when it comes to prioritizing these mental health initiatives.
Yeah, and HMI is in an interesting cross-section where we are both a business, we're a well-being business, but we're also implementer of this in lots of other organizations and communities. So we see these obstacles from both sides. And one of the big things that we have to address is that mental health and well-being is multifaceted. It's not one thing, and it's not even one thing for one person one day. So you need to have a system in place that addresses the fact that well-being is going to be something different depending on the circumstance. So when we talk about well-being at HMI, we really talk about it having 4 subcomponents, some of which are more inward focused, like awareness or insight, and some of which are a little bit more outward, so like connection or purpose, to really indicate that well-being is something that you want your employees to be working on themselves, but also this is something that you do for and with each other, that a truly well workplace has to work on this together. I love Mary's analogy. This is as a team sport, especially something like track and field where people are building on each other's successes, is that sometimes you really do need that extra support, or sometimes you benefit from providing that support to someone. And a lot of times we see workplace programs really focusing on the work that individuals do themselves or that a leader can do for someone else, rather than realize it's all part of a living ecosystem that will have to evolve together.
I love that. Love it. So I'm going to come back to you, Raquel, with this question. We did talk about things that are exciting us, but I also want to ask about surprises, right? Are there any surprises or things that surprised you about mental health at work when you first started, approaching this topic and working in the space?
Yes, this is a hard question. It's especially difficult for me because, like I said, this is my entire life. This is what I live and breathe and do. Everybody around me has gotten tired of hearing me talk about this because this is my entire existence. And it really took me by surprise, especially during the COVID ages and being an experienced leader and being an experienced well-being researcher, how hard it is to maintain something like this, even knowing all of the science and all of the tips and having all the structure. It's still really difficult to maintain. I mean, I'm talking to you as a parent who's hiding from her toddler in a closet because he's home from school again, and it's trying to roll with the punches in the COVID era is really hard. So it's not necessarily surprising, but I think it's important to acknowledge to ourselves and to each other that this is really difficult. And it's okay that it's difficult. It doesn't mean that we don't still do it. And that it's important to reach out and find resources and seek support groups and find any tools that you can find to help you through the days that are hard and remember the easy days when it's a little more difficult, and knowing that it's a journey and some days it's going to feel great and some days it won't, and it's not going to be linear. And that's just what skill building is. That's what habit formation is like. That's what science has told us it's always been. So it's not a problem that it's difficult. You keep doing the work.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. I want to ask Marta the same question about surprises that have come up as far as working in this mental health space.
Well, when I first started speaking about mental health in the workplace and boardroom, it really surprised me how much everyone wanted it. An overwhelming majority of senior management executives want actually to create a positive work environment. The problems lie mostly in that because of education, it's grossly lacking and companies struggle to create a concrete plan of action. But I think the biggest surprise I've had is realizing how much unlearning leaders need to do. Most of us climb to the top of our industries at a time when ideas such as leave your personal life at the door and workaholism were key. While we should all be proud of ourselves of achieving what we have in the environments we were in, it also means we have probably picked up some unhealthy ideas and strategies along the way. So for example, how many times have you wanted to introduce healthy work boundaries in your company, but thought to yourself that it doesn't really work or that doesn't really apply to you? For us to truly create the change we want to see, it requires a lot of self-reflection and leading by example, which is definitely uncomfortable and challenging.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Like, I just have nothing to say afterwards. Mary, you've unmuted. I would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, I was just unmuting in anticipation that you were going to call me next. I want to be prepared, right? I want to be prepared. I'm listening to both Raquel and Marta and Sarah. I mean, we have so much in common. I think two things for me: bias. It was really disappointing to still see people have tremendous bias about the idea of mental health being a really something that does impact a lot of our people. And then how in turn do we support them doing that? Now we're working to chip away at that a little bit too. The other thing that I found was very interesting is that a lot of people, as we got into this conversation more and more, and we brought the topic up and we educated and provided resources, that people learned that maybe that issue that I have that I can't quite seem to figure out how to manage is because of a mental health challenge that I have. So, I mean, we had a lot of advancements with folks on our teams about realizing, wow, that's a challenge that I need to go talk to somebody about. I never even realized that, which was really great. And Raquel, to your point about hiding in the closet, I've heard that 100 times from many, many people. And, how do you deal with that? How do you work through that about not feeling guilty about that? So that was a big revelation for many of our team members. I think what's exciting, though, is that we realize it, we've addressed it, we've acknowledged it, and now we're helping them address it.
Thank you for making space for people to come to those kinds of epiphanies for themselves. I really, really appreciate that. Sarah, I want to make sure that you can answer this question if you would like to as well before we move on to our final question.
I'll just be really brief. I know we're up against it with time. For me, it really amazed me the power of vulnerability, and particularly when men showed up and were vulnerable, the kindness that poured out, it just grew. So just reminded me how powerful vulnerability is.
Excellent. So for the sake of time, we are going to go to our final question. Sarah, I'm going to go to you first. So we know that much of what can be gained in improving mental well-being at work lies squarely in the hands of the company. All right, so we're going to close out here with this question. What are 3 things you would advise an employee, or actually an employer, not an employee, what would you advise an employer to start implementing now to make a positive difference in the health of their employees? So I'll start with you first, Sarah.
Thanks, Amber. So I've talked about one already, which is to try and build as much choice, supported choice, into the system as possible to help people balance their lives, which will help with that. Secondly, make sure that the line managers, the middle management, are really skilled and empowered to help, to know how to support people, to not be afraid of opening up a dialogue. And I guess the final thing is connect people. I think we've talked about this a lot. We have a system where we have reverse mentoring in the business. We call it connectors, and we connect people who don't normally talk to each other to hear each other's lived experience. And I think the more we can empathize and understand, we can never truly walk in somebody else's shoes, but the more we understand each other, it will also help create not only the psychological safety, but an appreciation of all the different facets of good mental health as well. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I love those. So I'm going to go to Marta. Same question. 1 to 3 things that you would advise an employer to start implementing right now to make positive difference.
So the first one, lead with vulnerability. I think we all agree on this. There is nothing more to add. We need to lead by example. And when we learn how to listen to our need, it also improves our ability to pick up on other people's emotions. The second one is education is key. If we do not understand a mental illness, we will not know how to respond to it. And the third one is actually focus on oxytocin. So if empathy doesn't come naturally to one, then try to focus on increasing oxytocin. As we know, it's the love hormone. And oxytocin fosters a sense of support, trust, and empathy. And how do we increase our own levels of oxytocin? So try to exercise, meditate, and show yourself the same compassion that you show to others.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate that. Mary, same question for you. 3 things for employers to start with.
Well, great stuff so far. I would just say reduce the stigma. The stigma has to go away. So fight that every step of the way that you can. Personalize it, really personalize it. And I think people respond and really internalize things more when you do personalize it. And then, the third thing I would say, fight for that culture of psychological safety. I mean, really, 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 really work to make sure that's ingrained in your company's culture.
Excellent. And last but not least, Raquel, you can round us out. Your 3 things.
No pressure. So I would say to encourage employers to think of this in terms of a habit formation journey. You're not implementing a solution. You're changing the way that your workplace is going about their day. And it's going to permeate throughout their entire lives. And to consider a holistic approach, engaging the fact that well-being is a multifaceted phenomenon and that they're going to need to work on different skills at different times. And like Sarah was saying, give them the choice to be able to do that when it is appropriate to them, to seek out resources. There's a lot of good science being done in this field right now, and there's lots of us out there who are just dying to bring it out into the world and help as many people as we can.
Awesome. So I am going to agree with Alice in the chat that this has been my favorite discussion of the Davos Equality Lounge thus far, though I may be partial because I was moderating it. But I do think that, Mary, Sarah, Raquel, Marta, you guys are amazing. I really, really appreciate all that you shared and all the wisdom that you shared. Hopefully folks will either go back and watch the recording so they can write down all of those 3 tips that each of you provided. But I just want to thank you so very, very much for joining me in this important discussion today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amber, Mary, Marta, Sarah, and Raquel. That truly was such an important conversation. Really appreciated that wrap up with everyone's 3 things to action. And it's clear that there's so much we need to do in terms of vulnerability being the power in leading by example, and that piece, Raquel, at the end, that well-being is a skill rather than a goal that'll ebb and flow throughout your life. So thank you again to each of you for that conversation. And also thank you, Amber, for guiding us through the first half of our Equality Lounge at Davos. Our next conversation is Closing the Equity Gap, How Global Leaders Can Take Action. And we'll be discussing the measures used